there's one more fat we haven't tried. What is it? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's July 27th, 2020. What's the one fat we haven't tried? Well, by now you figured out that it's hot processed soap from Tallow. I was going to do this as a cold process, but I just honestly ran out of time. So let's get ready to drop some lye and see how Tallow performs as a fat for soap. Now I just waved at you with one glove on my hand, and I waved the safety goggles in front of you because I haven't said anything about safety equipment now for well over a month, maybe almost 2 months. Wear safety equipment. It's recommended. You will need hand covering of some sort. You should have eye covering if you don't wear glasses. I don't wear the goggles because I wear glasses, and I do have my one hand covered today because I have a cut on it and I wanted to make sure I didn't splash any lye solution in it. The intention here is to get this just emulsified and not any further, not even to a light trace. And I've tipped the spoon up and shown you that that is what happened. And here we go. Yes, technically it's a boil over, but it's really not because we're using a much larger crock pot that I got for $2 at a garage sale. And so we have the extra room to accommodate what in the smaller black crock pot would have been a boil over. And this is probably the best view you're ever gonna get of the way this stuff bubbles up. It's like foam to a certain extent, but it doesn't have the tiny bubbles that foam has. And once those little bits kind of hit the air and heat at the same time on the sides there or on the rim where some, crept up, it's actually solid. So we're in the evaporation stage of this process. And I didn't have, with this process, a hard stage at this point. It was very soft and very fluid, not unlike lard. So let's talk about that for a minute. You remember our first lard experience? It was so easy to work with in this first stage where I have to stir it down and get it, all incorporated again. This, I didn't have any struggle, none whatsoever. So we're going to whip down those foamy bubbles a little bit, break them up, get some of the air out of it, and cover it again and let it go. And again, each one of these phases took about as much time as it takes for me to get around the camera and turn it off or adjust it and turn it back on. So this is probably the best view you're ever going to get in real time of what it looks like just before it turns to Vaseline, at least from, the videos I've shot. It doesn't look like you can see it the way I could see it visually, but you could see it foaming up and folding in on itself. And so I'm going to put the camera back on the tripod. While it's on the tripod, I'm going to put the tripod back down and we're just going to proceed on. I have to apologize while we're doing this for the camera angle. We're taking the temperature right now. The camera angle is due to the fact that I needed my desk back. So I took my shelf unit that I was working on for the last, 7 or 8 videos and put it back where it belongs. And I used a shorter, and by shorter I mean width from side to side. I used a shorter shelving unit, but it needs to be lowered. It is too high, and so you guys can't see anything, and I apologize for that. So I took the temperature anyway, and the temperature was way too hot. It was somewhere north of 235, and this is done. This is right at Vaseline stage, right at the transition stage. So what I'm going to have to do, I think, once I stir it down, is cover it with one of those oven sheets, which I've just went and got, and then let it cool down for quite a while, because what happens here is I unplug it, I take it out of the heating unit, and I just leave it covered. I'm going to tell you right now, spoiler alert, I waited too long. I covered it and waited too long, and it got very stiff before it cooled down enough to where I was comfortable dropping my sodium lactate and my fragrance. One of the things you have to watch with fragrance oils is what their flash point is. And for the most part, over 160 is too warm. Skipped ahead now, and we're ready to put this into the mold, and I just tip it up so you can see how stiff it is. It's already setting up as soap. Nevertheless, we press on in more ways than one, and I take the temperature once again, hoping that we're below 160, and I think we were somewhere like 164, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to add some milk, which might loosen it up with the fragrance oil and sodium lac, and that really didn't help a lot. It loosened it up, but really not enough for me to be satisfied. So we jump ahead. I get a pastry blade and mash it around as best I can so that at least the fragrance oil and the milk absorb. And so that's what all this nonsense is about. And then we're going to skip ahead again, and we're just going to jam it in the loaf mold any way we can and hope for the best. My suspicion is this is going to have to be remilled no matter what I do, because there's going to be air gaps. You see me trying to get a good scoop out there, and the consistency is hard mashed potatoes that, you made instant mashed potatoes and you didn't put enough liquid in, and then you got it very cold. It's very stiff and very hard to work with, but it's still malleable, and I mash it down with everything I have and just compress it as best I can, being mindful of the edges, trying to get the edges so they're not too ratty. And I've shown you the loaf mold, which you couldn't see. So we wrap it up anyway, stick it in a cold oven just for a few minutes to see if we can't get it to set up. That's it. That's all I have for you for this broadcast, because it's running a little long. I did do cold process, and so I will do both of the cuts for both of the hot and cold process in a second episode in about a half an hour. See you soon.